interesting and exciting discussion from the CII JLL conference on emerging new asset classes and disruptions within the real estate sector. I have with me a very exciting panel. I'm going to do a quick introduction before starting the conversation. On my extreme left, I have Dave Santani from Brookfield. Following him is the new business or the emerging asset class represented by Uday Lakkar from CoLive. I have Subodh Runwal with me. Everyone in Mumbai market knows of him from Runwal. And Boman R.Irani also joining me on my right. I have Mr. Deepak Goradia from Dosti Realty as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. So we're going to look at, I just was asking Uday, what is the size of the co-living industry? And he said it's 12 billion. 12 billion. And overall, Boman, what is the size of India's real estate industry?
I think about 50.
About 50.
Yeah, the recognized real estate size of India is about 50 billion.
So I'm saying, so you're saying that you've actually eaten into 20% of the business, or at least expanded it by 20%, right? Complemented it, expanded it. So that's where the discussion is going to go. What are the opportunities? And
no, let's check with them. Is that right? Is it 50 billion?
I think it should 50 billion and 12 billion. So, I mean, we can come to it later whether 12 billion is Excel number. This is a real number because activity is happening, but it is a huge opportunity. This is by no means a small number. If you were to add co-working to it, if you were to add student housing to it, I guess the number would expand much more. We've also looked at WeWork and the valuations it's getting. So my first question, Boman R.Irani, have you looked at any of these new opportunities, especially at a time when all of you are looking at strategies to grow? Your traditional real estate housing market has been going through a turbulent period.
So yes and no. In short, the yes part is we're always on the lookout to see what is new, what is where the trends are moving to. We've been told, and we kind of study when we go abroad also, internationally the co-living is the flavor of the day. In India also we generally ape the West, so co-living is really the buzzword. If you speak to any of the fund managers or you speak to most of the young men like Uday out here, they're always talking about the size of the market, the changing need of the young or the millennial as we like to call them. They're talking about why it makes more sense in a changing lifestyle where people do not, and we do see that trend where ownership is becoming less and less important, and people are moving towards experiences. So yes, we do look at it. On the other side, quite honestly, we are also caught up in a lot of our real estate as in the traditional form developmental issues, especially in Mumbai with the ever-changing landscape, with what all is happening. We're kind of very caught up out there, and development, redevelopment, slum development is also keeping us extremely busy. But with regards to co-living, I can tell you this, that a small part of our team is always looking at how we can add this to our portfolio as well. The yes and no was, yes, we do look at every new trend. So whether it's co-living, co-working, even your, all these warehousing opportunities. And on the other side, we're still grappling with issues that are real life issues for real estate developers in Mumbai, at least, in the MMR, that I can say.
I thought I would see some amount of a big smile at least on your face now that the FSI premiums have been reduced by the Maharashtra government. Seems to be very generous.
So that's how the media has put it across. It's been a big boost to developers.
Maybe somebody can afford a home finally who may not have to rent it.
So no. So very, very clearly, yes. The trend we see is that they realize that there are issues and they want to work towards it. But as it happens when it comes to giving, instead of going all out and saying, let's open it up for once and give the real required impetus or boost, I can be very honest and tell you, they're not being as open-hearted as they should be. As a matter of fact, they're not being open-hearted at all. They're making it sound, so optically to the rest of the world it looks like huge advantages, and to any developer you ask him, you're not even recovering the cost of where he was earlier. On the other side, and I say this again and again, the government wants affordable housing, and affordable housing will not be a possibility unless and until the government wholeheartedly participates.
Subodh Runwal, why would you not do what Uday Lakkar is doing. Why are you struggling with this business?
Okay, so two aspects of your question. First of all, I'm not struggling with the business. Means I think the core business is there.
I'm so glad to hear that.
So the core business is still there. There is still a phenomenal demand in Bombay and in this country. We really need new houses to be built, new offices to be built, new malls to be built. So India is a growing country. Yes, there has been a temporary, temporary blip as such. I think in the next few years, if India continues to grow at 6%, we are very optimistic. So the core sector,
So for you then, let me ask you a follow-up question. So for you then, any of these new emerging opportunities, are they still peripheral in consideration? I mean, would you still, traditional big developers like you, still focus on your core business, which is mid to premium housing and even luxury?
So we will continue to focus on our core, but also at the same time, these are interesting opportunities.
Uday Lakkar, you didn't have to build to launch a co-living business, right? How are you doing it, and is there a marriage between traditional developers and your business? Because honestly, with their wherewithal, if they decide that we want to get into co-living, start designing it better and build for co-living, they could actually have you out of the business. I mean, it is possible, right? So how do you two come together and actually probably grow this into a larger size of industry?
True. A nice question indeed. I keep asking that to myself, that what really am I doing if you don't own the assets? What really is the value that I'm bringing to the table, right? Because these PGs, hostels, whatever you call it, chamris, shared apartments have been there for ages. What's the real value that we are doing? And I keep asking this question every year to myself, that is worth investing time. So the more the time is elapsing, the more I'm realizing that it's a complementary skill set. It's not something which can survive in isolation, which can grow in isolation, right?
Dave, so I'm sure with the money that you have to deploy at Brookfield, you must be looking at all these opportunities, including rental housing, which I believe Brookfield does invest in globally, which has now become such a big asset class, which is being spoken about right now. The government is very keen on it. Tell me, how do you look at these opportunities for investment? I mean, how are the cycles of your profitability and return on these different asset classes or investments? This is not even an asset class, it's a service.
So we continue to look at traditional residential, so I won't go down that road, but we continue to finance it, and as Subodh said, that is a large critical share of the market.
Why did you come in the morning? There would have been no issues on liquidity, would there be? I mean,
I think it's a big hole to fill, Manisha. I don't think we are the only guys pouring the sand in the hole. But so that we continue to do that, and we believe that market is here in the long run. It will go through its cycle, but it is an investable class. On the alternate side, we've looked at co-living, we've looked at student housing. We do it globally, like you mentioned, and we are looking at it here. So today, of course, all of this is really nascent. So just from a scale perspective, it's a challenge for a foreign investor to get in beyond a point. So student housing, just like with everything else in India, the numbers are huge. There are some 10 million students out there living away from home looking for housing. About 4 million of these are completely in the unorganized segment, so potentially they are all student housing potential. Practically, when you look at a student housing from an investor perspective, I think the first challenge is you have on-campus, off-campus, right? On-campus, the challenge is regulatory. Most universities are set up as a trust structure, just the way our education system runs, and the land isn't actually owned or can't be transferred. So as an investor, if you're trying to buy into a student housing building or a project where you can't own the land, it basically negates the concept. And the moment you move to off-campus, you're then struggling to compete with the PGs and the chamris who are much cheaper than you. And the student housing in India continues to remain super price sensitive. And then you're also competing with a lot of universities who are now bundling the housing with the education cost, and therefore you can't really poach their students. So practically, while the numbers are huge, it's still a challenge to get it to a really investable stage. Co-living again makes a lot of sense from a consumer perspective. It really bumps up because your efficiencies are great, your occupancy is potentially great. If you run it right with the right operators, your yields really go up. And once you hit a 6-7% residential yield, it makes it an investable class for investors, which means it generates liquidity for the developer, and it motivates them to build that asset class. So it's a little bit of a round circle, but that thesis is yet to be played out on scale. We haven't really seen large projects and large operators deliver an efficient co-living space and push up those kind of returns. So today it's an Excel sheet return basically. Hopefully we'll get there as the industry matures.
You're talking specifically about India market. Globally,
I'm talking about the India market,
scale has been achieved. So for your funding, you would not go, so here Uday, you're the only person in between financier who looks at traditional businesses, does not see scale. So your funding comes from a completely different class of PE investors who look at startup businesses. What value do they see? Why would they not be attracted to funding, let's say, a Purvankra's just co-living business per se, where the asset is also there? Can you just run us through the basic dynamics?
Let's look at like a relay race, right? There are different parts of the value chain in which people make money. Some people like to own the land and make money. Some people like to make margins on the development piece. Some others might actually want to finance the last leg of the financing, and some people might be more keen on the rental part, right? So we are very sorted that we want to enter the relay race when the asset is constructed. Okay. We have our expertise in terms of being able to give the inputs to somebody in terms of being able to optimize the asset class. Yet we realize that there are limitations, as they rightly pointed out that India has not seen the scale, and he's very right when he mentions that, right? I do see optimism that the depth of demand is there, the abundance of residential real estate stock is there, albeit not in the exact same shape and size the way we require it. Yet both the things being there essentially necessitates the question that it's just a matter of time before which people will get the engine right? When demand is there, depth is there, supply is there, we will figure it out, right? And we are in the process of figuring it out.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So we've spoken about co-living, I mean, which is a sort of a service play once the asset is already created. But then within the asset creation opportunities, Deepak Goradia, there are many opportunities which developers are now quite excited about. So we will not go into commercial and office. It's established that that story is doing extremely well. I would like to understand from you as Dosti Group, what is it that excites you? I mean, is it warehousing? Is it industrial? Because someone tells me warehousing is not really about boxing spaces. It's actually a real estate story. Logistics, of course, supports your e-commerce business. So what would attract someone like you, a developer like you?
Today, as of now, we, as Boman also said, we do work on the conventional and the core business. The opportunity point of view, we've been working on looking at exploring the things. One is a co-living or something like warehousing. The warehousing itself works to be attractive when you look at the opportunity, the way e-commerce and the things are developing across India, and the volume of warehousing, the multiple 40% growth in quarter to quarter, the way numbers are from the, even I see the JLL report. So it definitely is a very attractive thing, and we are looking positively for the warehousing as one of the opportunity where Dosti would, if not now, may in further time to come, I would like to take a position in warehousing as one of the opportunity.
What I'm hearing from all my panelists who are in traditional business, and of course the gentleman who's in a new emerging opportunity, is that there is so much steam in the core business that right now this is a peripheral thing that you're considering. Dharmesh, come in here. What is it? I mean, I know that everyone has said we are not struggling, and I'm happy to hear that. I'm also going to say, look, we cannot change the fact that real estate by far is the largest asset class which is consumed in India and globally. You can't change it. So clearly it is there. But what is it in terms of new opportunities beyond residential and traditional office space that you would look at?
Manisha, I think today everybody's concentration is completing their projects on hand. So, if I just cut a little, discussion to the informal side, I think it is important that everybody right now concentrates on completing the projects on hand. As you rightly said, I think it is exciting to see these new asset classes emerge. I think everybody is sitting on availability of land today is there. So if you look at MMR, I think FAR is today available. Everybody is looking at putting it to creative uses. So I think that is the exciting bit, that how you can then monetize your portfolio in different ways. So if you have say 2 million square feet, can you do 100,000 square feet of co-living in it? can you do 100,000 square feet of student housing in it? The moment efficiencies emerge in those sectors, I think everybody will be very exciting to look at the alternate asset classes.
If I were to ask you, what are, like you said, capex is not your business, right? You get into the operational side of it. What are the kind of margins that you work on? Simple question.
In the ballpark range of anywhere from 20 to 30%. That's what we
Good
make on a
God.
steady state on every
Really time
asset.
to move into the business. I'm telling you, 20 to 30, you all are now saying that your traditional business is down to 10 to 12, if you're lucky. So, I mean, if you can share some understanding in terms of the capex which goes into the business, what are the sort of, margins that you can look at these guys are always constantly in an expansion phase. You net margins to aate hi nahi hai bahut saalon tak. So, just the basic dynamics of or core business of any of these emerging classes.
Right, so the way to think of it is if you did a regular residential project, right, which Subodh or Boman do, and today you rented it out, you would make a 2% yield on the rentals, renting out to individual families. And correct me if I'm wrong, I know very little Uday about your business, but I'm assuming you follow a regular OpCo model. So the operating company model is they go out, lease an entire tower on one of these projects, and then they break it up into smaller pieces, which is effectively then given to guys sharing rooms, sometimes sharing apartments, build common areas, common spaces, in a way that regularly one family would occupy one unit, which is maybe 3 people, but once they build it the right way, you probably have 8 people there, and the effective number of people staying in a particular area just went up in terms of rent paying people, and therefore your rental yields move up from 2% to 6-7%. Now from a real estate developer's selfish perspective, right, for anybody sitting on the stage here, what matters is if I built a tower and if I lease it to Uday, what rental yield does it give me? And at the moment it touches 6-7%, it makes great business sense for them to build it, lease it, and then sell it to an investor like us and give them liquidity. If they are not able to generate those kind of yields from the operating business and the rental yields suffer, it doesn't incentivize the developer to go out and build that product. So it's a balancing act between the two.
Manisha, I'd really like to understand, there is an entire asset class for the elderly, the assisted living part, which I think is which is something that we at Rustomjee are definitely looking at, and we are learning from those of our industry peers who are already doing this, Ashiana being one of them. And I think over there also there are 2 schools of thought, and one of them is the senior living wants to move outside the city and have a nice peaceful life. The other one is the senior living wants to continue to be active in the city. We are playing the second part. We want to be those who are, in the city. And towards that, I can just share, what we are doing is we are tying up with all service providers in the area to make sure that everything that would be there in a gated community, senior living outside of the city is provided inside. The changes that we make to the homes are basically wheelchair assist in terms of the door sizes, in terms of the bathrooms, the way they are designed, so that someone who had a wheelchair would be able to kind of take care of himself. We are not seeing this as a huge market as of right now, but at the same point of time, we believe that there's going to be a learning curve, and towards that we've started already doing, let's say, a very insignificant part of our portfolio to kind of study this market. Very, very simply put, storytelling gets all the attention, right? For the longest time, real estate developers weren't storytellers. We didn't understand how to tell the story. So everybody who came and told a story, the entire market got drawn out there. Manisha, I mean, how many people will you find who will say, yes, it makes a lot more sense to rent versus buy? Maybe in the short term, yes. Maybe because of certain conditions, yes. But have you seen anybody, especially in India, who doesn't want to own a home? Everybody wants a certain amount of certainty. Listen to me, you talk of a millennial generation that is changing the way it's looking at things, but that's because they're still young. At some point of time, the need to buy, the urge to buy, the urge to settle down is a very human need. Now, unless the world changes more than what I have imagined, which it may, I see that this home buying is going to continue. Whether the affordability comes in, I've already mentioned it's a very big governmental play that has to support it, but really in anybody's portfolio, leave the top 1 percentile who are all the time showing that all we do is invest to get returns. It is beyond returns also.
Okay, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. There was a time when everyone thought
Well said,
graduating from a scooter to a car was a necessity. Now we have a situation where people are saying in the world of Uber and Ola, and this is me as well, I'm not a millennial, Dharmeshan. I am nowhere. I would love to be, perceived as one, but I'm nowhere a millennial. But even today, when we were going from, we have 2 cars, we have 2 working people. One of them was hitting 9 years, and it's not great for the environment to run a vehicle which is more than 10 years old in a city. We actually were considering that should we not just not buy the second car, because we looked at the maintenance cost, we looked at the running cost, we looked at the driver cost, and we said, guess what? It makes so much more sense to just every day schedule a Uber, go and come back. So I'm not a millennial. How are you going to fight that and say it is still a traditional business, this is the way business is done?
Manisha, I think, again, Uber getting extrapolated to housing is pushing it too far, according to me. Clearly, cars and homes, there is a distinction.
I'm going to come back 5 years from now.
Cars essentially move you. So it's a moving thing. So car essentially moves you. It's a moving thing. So it will keep coming and going. Across the world, so Singapore has done so many studies that the moment they put people to own houses, people looked at life differently. So the moment, I think you need some anchoring in life. So that is a choice that you'll have to do, whether you need any anchors or you just want to float around. So if you want to float around for life, that is a choice you'll make. But if you want to get anchored, then you will have to have a home that is one of the anchors. So there is a big debate whether you should ever get married or not. So, but there is a debate today amongst the millennials whether it is worth getting married. So that's a choice that you will make. But in India, it's still a very, very small percentage. I think what is far more important, as Boman mentioned, is that we need to work on the demand side. I think there is a there is a fear to invest that needs to go away. The moment that goes away, I think we are sitting on for the first time, I think in our times, we are sitting on a fire pent up. So for 5 years, people have been waiting, except it being extremely necessary, they are not taking the decision. So I think it is the first time, so whenever the turnaround happens, it is going to be dramatic and it's going to last for a while.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.